In our panel early, Byron York, chief political correspondent of the Washington Examiner, editor-in-chief of LifeZette, Laura Ingram, Olivier Knox, Yahoo News chief Washington correspondent, and Michael Crowley, senior foreign affairs correspondent for Politico. Michael, your thoughts on this hearing?
Well, you know, Jeff Sessions brought some passion and personality to it. I think he made, Jim Comey was a credible witness, and Sessions seems credible when he's expressing this outrage and indignation at what he's been accused of. I think that what was more and so I think he was effective in those moments. I think what was more problematic for him was trying to square the circle as to why he couldn't discuss his conversations with President Trump. I mean, the Russia story now is on two parallel tracks. The really important one is, was there some kind of collusion? What was the nature of Russian influence in this campaign? The second one is, how has President Trump and the people around him, how have they handled this since they took power in the administration? Has there been any attempt to obstruct justice? What was going on with the firing of Jim Comey? Sessions wouldn't talk about his conversations with the president, but he would not say that the president has invoked executive privilege. He cited essentially traditions that he couldn't really specify and said he didn't want to step on the president's future ability to invoke executive privilege. That led one Democrat to say that he was obstructing the investigation, and it seemed to me that Sessions did not have quite as good answers on that front. That was awkward for him.
Laura, one of the things they point to was Admiral Rogers with the NSA. You had Director of National Intelligence. Similar answers and similar frustration from Senate Democrats on this committee about the answers.
This is a tension among the branches of government that's been with us almost since the founding of the Republic. There's always this interest that Congress has to get more information from the executive branch. You saw this play out repeatedly in the Obama administration, going back to 2008. Remember when Desiree Rogers, it's a bit blast from the past, remember when Desiree Rogers, the social secretary, and she botched the handling of the security at the White House? Well, Congress wanted her to testify. She's a social secretary. How did these two socialites get into the White House? The Obama administration came forward and said, no, we're not going to offer her up to testify. There's no reason for it. And they cite confidentiality.
Not executive privilege.
Not executive privilege, but the need for there to be, the senior staff has to be able to deal with the president and deal with these matters on the basis of this general idea of confidentiality. However, the courts on this have been clear that executive privilege, if that's cited, is not absolute. And number two, on the issue of confidentiality, separation of powers, which is what Jeff Sessions claimed today, it always has to be weighed against the other branches of government needing to know, needing to have their appropriate constitutional checks and balances. But the fact that Jeff Sessions made this claim, contrary to what I'm hearing on some of these other networks, that this is some novel legal concept, it is not. In fact, it was cited repeatedly by Ben Rhodes at the Obama administration when they refused to testify at all. Jeff Sessions comes and testifies, and you could say, well, because he's testifying, he has to say everything. I don't think that's established at all as a legal matter.
Byron, back to the 30,000-foot look at this hearing. You could see by the fiery exchanges and maybe his opening statement why the Attorney General decided to testify publicly.
He did. I think he felt wronged by the Comey testimony of last week, wanted to set things straight. I think he was very strong on this question of this alleged meeting with the Russian ambassador Kislyak at the Mayflower Hotel last April. Trump comes to Washington, gives his first big foreign policy speech, and a number of ambassadors, including Kislyak, are there. And there's this idea that he had a meeting. He said there was just no meeting. Maybe we said, hi, how are you doing? Nice day. But there was simply no meeting. He also pushed back very hard, and Catherine played that, against this idea that Comey gave that there was maybe some sort of hush-hush bad stuff about Jeff Sessions that Comey knew about, but he couldn't tell anybody. He said there's nothing there. There's absolutely nothing there. I think he was pretty strong, giving his reasons for recusal, and also said that he had basically effectively recused himself from day one at the Justice Department, not taking part in any substantive roles. But I did think what we saw about halfway through the hearing was Democrats really began to get traction on this. You're keeping something from us, you're hiding something from us, and what you're telling the president. And Heinrich and King and Harris, the three Democratic senators, really pushed this hard. And so far, the administration has not given a good answer in terms of precedents that they can cite for this being withheld.
Here's one of those exchanges with Senator Dianne Feinstein.
Did you ever discuss Director Comey's FBI handling of the Russia investigations with the president or anyone else?
Senator Feinstein, that would call for a communication between the Attorney General and the President, and I'm not able to comment on that.
You are not able to answer the question here, whether you ever discussed that with him?
That's correct.
That's correct. Olivia.
Well, when he was asked whether he'd ever discussed alleged Russian meddling with candidate Trump, he said he couldn't recall. When he was prompted on whether he'd ever gotten a briefing about the alleged Russian meddling since he became Attorney General, he said no. He said everything he knew from the papers. I think there's a lot of room here for at least one more round of questioning of Jeff Sessions. There are a lot of things that he said that I think Democrats are going to want to circle back on. He's not sure why Donald Trump fired Jim Comey. And then he struggled a little bit to explain what happened in his confirmation hearings when he denied flatly meeting with Russian officials, both in spoken testimony and in a letter to Senator Patrick Leahy. I think there's probably a lot of room for Democrats to circle back and ask some more questions.
But as far as the first track on the collusion, we did not learn anything in this hearing other than he firmly does not know, says he doesn't see, doesn't hear, didn't know.
Didn't hear, didn't know. No one brought forward new information. He had an exchange with Tom Cotton where they essentially ridiculed the idea that a plot like this could be possible, and particularly that it could unfold in part at a reception at the Mayflower Hotel. I think some Democrats felt like that was setting a high bar. Cotton said something like, you know, even in a Hollywood movie it wouldn't happen this way. And you know, some Democrats were saying it's not that simple. You guys are setting too high a bar. But no new information and basically a strong pushback on that substantive question. But again, there's a second track here.
No, agreed.
Woe betide the Trump White House. How did they respond to this storyline? And that's the thing we didn't hear much about.
I should point out that there are two panelists at this table who were at that reception at the Mayflower. You and Byron.
It could be part of the whole plot.
It could be at the speech.
I spoke to Ambassador Kislyak. I quoted him in a story, so no one's contacted me about it. But it's a small calling card, I guess, for a few days.
Could be a subpoena.
Well, I think when people talk about having discussions with, like when you're like, did you have a discussion with? If someone says hi, or it's like, hey, how you, is that a discussion? I think you've got to go back to the other question here: the desire for Sessions to come to Congress. There are other people who refuse to testify before Congress. Susan Rice is one of them. Now, why isn't she not testifying? Is she going to claim some confidentiality? Because you know the Republicans would ask, did you have any conversations with Barack Obama or any other senior staff about unmasking names, identities? What would she cite? Would she cite executive privilege? If she didn't, would she cite confidentiality or separation of powers? I imagine she would, and I imagine the Democrats would have no problem with it.
That's the other nugget I wanted to pull out. He did confirm the existence of multiple probes into leaks of information out of the administration, and said that some people would probably be sorry that they leaked. I think that that's the first time we've had ironclad confirmation from DOJ about the existence of those investigations.
But I do think he's hesitant to talk fully about his interactions with the president, in part because there's so much he doesn't know. He'll say, well, I recommended that Director Comey be dismissed because of his handling of the Clinton matter. And the senator says, yeah, but what did President Trump say about that or think about that? And Sessions' answer, his honest answer is, I don't know.
Right.
I mean, why did Donald Trump do this?
Look what he told Lester Holt on NBC, so something different. Yeah. Panel, thank you. We'll